Good evening. I'm calling the regular meeting of the University Place City Council for Monday, November 2nd, 2020 to order. We are conducting our meeting remotely in compliance with Special Open Public Meetings Act rules issued by Governor Inslee's emergency order. City Clerk, can you please conduct the roll call?
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Figueroa.
Councilmember Figueroa present.
Councilmember Keel.
Councilmember Keel present.
Council Mayor Pro Tem Lee.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee present.
Councilmember McCluskey.
Councilmember McCluskey is here.
Councilmember Fleming. Mayor Pro Tem Worthington.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington is present.
Mayor Belisi.
Mayor Belisi is present.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. I understand that Councilmember Stan Fleming is attempting to make login, so hopefully before our meeting gets too far underway that he will be able to join us this evening. Before we begin our meeting, we have a few special rules I want to go over with everyone. First, participation in public comments and public testimony on the public hearings this evening will be accepted by the following methods. 1, written communications or comments. Testimony will continue to be accepted by email. Comments received before 5:30 p.m. deadline will be electronically provided to the City Council for their consideration. 2, subject to technological limitations, the Council will also accept telephonic comments or testimony by calling the number listed on the agenda, 1-509-342-7253, conference ID number 393-847-993#. For the members of the public who are calling in, please be advised that your call will be taken in the order received. To ensure order, your microphone will be muted until you have been recognized to speak. You will be recognized by the last 4 digits of the telephone number you are calling from. At that time, you will be asked to unmute your microphone by pressing *6. Secondly, for council members, as with our previous remote meetings, we will continue to use the round robin method in the sequence showing in the speaking and voting chart that has been provided to each of you to ensure order of our meetings and that everyone has a chance to speak. With that, may I ask everyone to please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, may I have a motion to call for approval of our agenda as provided?
Mayor Belisi, I move this is, excuse me, Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, and I move for the approval of the agenda as provided and distributed for this evening.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Councilmember Keel, I second.
I have a first and a second. Are there any objections to or for the approval of the agenda? Okay, hearing none, the approval of the agenda passes unanimously. This evening, we do have an opportunity for public comment. Do we have anybody that has phoned in? Okay, to my knowledge, that we do not have any public at this time for public comments. So with that, the next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. May I have a motion to approve or amend the consent agenda as submitted?
Yes, Mayor Belisi, Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, I move for the approval of the consent agenda.
I have a first. Do I have a second?
Councilmember Keel, I second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Are there any objections to approval of the consent agenda? Okay, not seeing any or hearing any, the consent agenda is approved as submitted unanimously. All right, at this time, we are at the public hearing phase. We are conducting a public hearing on our 1% property tax levy. I will ask Leslie Blaisdell, our finance Director to provide a staff report on this public hearing. Leslie, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Per the state statute, the city is authorized to increase its property tax annually up to the lesser of the implicit price deflator, or 1%. The inflation rate as of August 27th is 0.60152%, which means all local governments in Washington state may increase their property taxes by that amount for 2021. The property tax levy increase is included in the 21-22 proposed biennial budget. In order to implement the increase for 2021, it is necessary to adopt an ordinance imposing the increase in the regular property tax levy. The statutory limit results in an increase in the levy of $21,413.98, which is a percentage of 0.477662. Exclusive of revenue from new construction, improvements to property, and any increase in the value of the state assessed property. All property tax goes to the police fund, and the police contract increases by 3% each year. A study session was held on October 19th to study this issue, and that concludes my report for this evening.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, we are open for public comment. However, we've had no one phone in. We did receive, as did all council members, emails from 4 citizens: Jack Allard, Elisa Katzel, Jared Kono, and Jana Novak, in regards to public comment. I hope that you have had an opportunity to read their comments. With that, I will close a public hearing and ask for a motion for council consideration.
Mayor Belisi, Mayor Pro Tem Worthington moves for the approval of the property tax increase as submitted.
Okay, after first, do I have a second?
Councilmember Keel, I second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Are there any comments or questions in regards to the 1% property tax levy? With that, I will go with Councilmember Figueroa. Do you have any comments or questions at this time? Comments,
Yes, I do, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay.
A couple of two comments actually. One is based on some of the responses from one of the 4 that wrote. It seems that there is a still, and we've known this for all the years that we've done this. The 1% and how it's calculated. Some people base that on 1% of the total tax that they're being taxed on, which could be representative of a very high tax. I'd like to yourself or Leslie to go through the simple math about how that is calculated and what it amounts to of around $3.50, $3.50, not $3,500. And so I think we need to communicate that clearly tonight. And I also would like to have, and I didn't check the website, but if it's not on the website, a special link that people can click on and say how the 1% is calculated, and making it really layman's terms. And that is that here's your property tax of $3,500. We get 8 cents on the dollar, which is about $320 a year just for the city. And this 1% is based on that $320, which is $3.20. Something very simple that people can understand and see that it is not a huge amount and it's a minimal amount, but still it's something that provides us some cushion toward the inflation on our sheriff's contract. So those are the 2 comments I have.
Ms. Blaisdell, do you have an explanation on calculations?
The calculation, our 1% is based on the percentage of the tax that we get. As you know, the property tax is distributed between the state, the county, the library, fire district, school district. It includes voter approved levies. But of the total of For 2020, the rate per thousand of assessed value was $13.99. Of that, only 0.9654, so less than a dollar, goes to the city. So if you had a home valued at $400,000, the city portion of your property tax was only $386. If you did a full 1% on that, that increase would be $3.86. And that's an annual increase in total. You can see Linda has put the dollar bill up there that shows where the property tax is distributed. And again, only 7 cents of every dollar comes to the city. So the amount that we're increasing, it only impacts our city portion. We don't do anything that impacts any of those other entities.
Thank you.
Councilmember Keel, did you have any comments or questions at this time?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Keel, I do have a comment and a question. It's similar to what Councilmember Figueroa was bringing up, and I asked Amanda or Linda to show the same thing, the pie chart. Did you get there's a pie chart that that's in our budget. Yeah, that if you can make it just a little bit larger, be great. There you go. A little bit more. There we go. Okay, great. And so this is the same thing with the dollar, but just a different graphic, just in case people's brains could be wired a little differently. And it's, oops, got smaller again. Yeah, so it's the same thing. And if you look at these percentages of our total property tax that we pay, you can see the city's portion there in the goal up at the top at that 6-something%, 6.9. Yeah, it's still small. I can't really tell. It's that small amount. And even the county gets more of our tax dollars, property tax dollars, than the city does. And you can see those other very large breakout, the school, fire, and even the state. You know, I mean, they get 21-something% of what the city gets out of the property taxes that we pay here in University Place. And if you take those other smaller ones, if you total all those ones, the conservation and the flood, and if you count the library and the port, you count all of those together, that's still 7%, 7.1%. That's even more than what the city gets. So, I mean, we've got a very small piece of the property tax. And when you think of $3 increase, and what we're paying for is for police. When you call 911, you want somebody to respond. And all of that 6 cents, 8 cents, whatever it is we get out of your property tax, all of that goes to having police in our city. And you can see, you know, where a lot of our other and you know, I live in this city too, so I pay property tax just like everybody else, and so you can see where the vast majority of our property tax goes. And I can tell you, having been on the school board for 10 years, I know that those property taxes come into the school, and we use it. They use it there for school stuff, and it's nowhere near. Way more than what we get in the city. So I'm going to support this. I'm not a real tax person, but this is one that I just don't see how, as being a responsible council member, how I couldn't support it, knowing that it's going to police and knowing where all of our other funds are going. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Keel. Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, do you have any comments or questions at this time?
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, as I have one comment or two. I've read the public comments. I've done some independent research on the matter, and I really don't have any other comment other than what has been said by the two council members before me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember McCluskey, do you have any comments or questions at this time?
Mayor, no, I don't. Everything has been stated, and I also want to state that I have read the public comments as well.
Thank you. I see that Councilmember Fleming was finally able to log on. Do you have any comments or questions regarding the property tax levy public hearing?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do, but brief. People obviously, and I've stated in the past about my concerns and objections to taxes and raising them. But when you look at the two examples that were given tonight, both by Councilmember Figueroa and Keel, with regards to how that tax increase is divided up and what it covers. This is more, I tend to look at this one as more along the lines of the school maintenance levies that they pass just to maintain the services that they have. So this is one of those things where it's, no one likes to see price of business or cost of things going up, but this is one that allows the city to continue delivering at least the current services it has, and it really maintains the status quo when we're looking at cost of living within our region. So I don't see a real issue with this one. Other than, people will feel it. All of us who live in the city will feel that by, I think it was $3 is what Kent was saying to that. And I think, again, when you look at that pie chart and see how much schools and fire and state are taking, that's 75% right there of the tax money that people are paying. So the rest is divvied up among the other districts, and the city gets that very small percentage. So this particular one does make sense. So thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, any comments or questions at this time?
Yes, a question and then perhaps a comment. The questions for Leslie. And Leslie, thank you for putting up the chart, and certainly that helps illustrate things well. Is it from the earlier statement that because of the state limitations and how much we can raise, we have a ceiling of 1% or the price inflation adjustment, or deflator, I think is the term that's used. It's actually 0.61%. It is slightly more than half. And we are, by tonight's action, if it passes, we are raising by what amount?
So the IPD is 0.60152. However, they also, it's a very complicated calculation. They also lower that based on our highest levy rate. So the amount that we are actually increasing is 0.477662. Using that percentage based on our $400,000 home value example, that would be $1.84.
Okay, $1.84 for a $400,000 home. That's $1.84 additional for the year.
For the year, yes.
Okay, that's about, and that's important put together with all of our tax collections and university plays to help pay for our police. Individually, it is about the price of a medium drink at McDonald's. It does limit what people get to do with their money, but it is not a budget killer from that perspective. Cumulatively, why would we want it as well? And it's the difference it makes is over 10 years, that's $200 and some thousand that we would not have collected. And that's the difference in a police officer there. That is one less officer by the time if we don't collect that. Ultimately, we are faced with further reductions in an already reduced from what it used to be police force. Fortunately, we've been able to add a little bit back to that, but there are still perceptions of more needs. This helps us get there, and it is what we do. Government costs money to deliver services, and this is as Councilmember Fleming said, a kind of an adjustment for the maintenance and inflation rate. So yes, it has my support as well. I did read the comments, and I do appreciate people taking the time and energy to put those forth. And I know this is a very complex issue. Partly it's because of the way we have to write these things up. We're not given or even perhaps allowed in formal notices to explain in the detail that it would take to help folks understand what's actually happening. So certainly we want to take the time to explain in the detail here before we take action, and I believe we've done that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Well, I think my council members have done a wonderful job of explaining to our citizens the importance of this 1% property tax levy. I will let our citizens know, however, that this does by no means solve our problem. We have a 3% increase in our police budget, and we collect less than 1% additional revenue to offset that 3% increase. We will be looking at a situation, if we don't find additional funding sources, that we will have to look at potentially cutting our police services, because like everything else, services cost money, whether you're a business or you're a government. Your clients, and in this case, our citizens, expect police services when they need them. So without that, we will have to have the conversation of how we continue providing the minimal amount of police services if we don't find additional revenue. And I know there's an outcry in the community that they want more police officers. That will require additional revenue besides the 1% property tax increase. So I want to thank the council members for clarifying how taxes are calculated, particularly when it comes to property. But I can assure the public that we are trying to be as diligent as possible and not increase taxes for the sake of increasing taxes. This is to cover essential services. So with that, I want to thank all our citizens that did participate and provide the comments. It was very meaningful. And I will be reaching out to you individually with some follow-up information in regards to the property tax for your edification. So with that, do we have any additional questions or comments that need to be clarified before I call for a vote? Okay, not seeing any. City Clerk, can you please conduct a roll call vote?
Councilmember Figueroa,
Councilmember Figueroa, aye.
Councilmember Keel,
Councilmember Keel, aye.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee,
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, aye.
Councilmember McCluskey,
Councilmember McCluskey, aye.
Councilmember Fleming,
Councilmember Fleming, aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington,
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, aye.
Mayor Belisi.
Mayor Belisi, aye.
The motion carries, Mayor.
Thank you. At this time, we will move on to our second public hearing, which is our utility tax. We have had a previous study session on this. So at this time, I will ask our attorney, Matt Kaiser, to provide the staff report for this.
Good evening, and thank you, Madam Mayor. Matt Kaiser, City Attorney. This is the time and place set for a public hearing on utility tax. As the mayor alluded a few moments ago, you have had this twice before for study session, first on October 5th and then again on October 9th. To briefly recap for the benefit of the council, the city, like many other cities, imposes an array of utility taxes. That is to say, taxes on utilities for the privilege of doing business within the city. This proposed utility tax would impose taxes on three specific utilities: sewer, electric, and water. And it would do so stair-stepping rate increases, first in the amount of 3% beginning on April 1st of next year, and then additional 3% 1 year later, with revenues to be dedicated to specific funds. The sewer amounts to be dedicated to the street fund, the electric revenues dedicated to the general fund, and the water dedicated to the public safety fund. Just two brief comments before I'll yield the floor back to council. As part of the study session materials, we had shared with council that we were in the process of doing respective due diligence with affected ratepayers. The April 1st dates are in response to the discussions with certain affected ratepayers that we are commending for your discussion tonight. The second is that you do have several agenda items down, a companion item related to the TBD fee reduction from $35 to $10. Passage on this one is necessary for consideration of the TBD legislation. And I can certainly take that up in due course as council sees fit for discussion. With that, I will conclude my hopefully very brief remarks. And with that, I'm also happy to stand for any questions that council may have.
Okay, it does appear that we have some council questions, so I will be instituting the roll call to make sure that everybody has an opportunity for questions only, not comments, just questions only. Councilmember Figueroa, you raised your hand. Do you have any questions in regards to this?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Matt, the presentation as well as the resolution for the TBD alluded to the reduction of the car tap fees being enacted in 2021, sometime in 2021, which is incorrect. It should reflect 2020. Excuse me, it reflects 2022 and it should reflect 2021. And that needs to be corrected for any consideration tonight.
All right. I will share with you, I'm already on it. I have it on my notes as part of the commentary I was going to give in conjunction with that. But I am tracking that.
Correct, but again, like you said, the consideration before us is attached at the hip with that, and that needed to be part of this conversation now.
If council prefers, you can table the discussion on this, revisit the TBD. However, I can advise council in my comments as it relates to the TBD. I have that exact note that you had referenced and would have invited a floor amendment from council to address section 2 of the TBD legislation. And that would be staff, and that is the staff recommendation to amend that commencement date from 2022 to 2021.
Thank you.
Okay, is that all your questions, Councilmember Figueroa?
Yes, Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Keel, do you have any direct questions?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Keel. So, Matt, the utility tax, I think I know the answer to the question, but I just want to ask just for clarification. This is the tax that the city is placing on citizens or placing on the utility, or both?
It is a tax placed on the utility. However, that is not to stop the utility from adjusting their rates to compensate for the tax. And if, for those of us within the city, you know, if you pay your TPU water bill, you'll see on that rate sheet that they already call out the rate that is chargeable to the city of Tacoma. I would fully expect, if passed, just to continue to use that example, they would identify that, but they can't do a direct pass along. It's a tax on the utility. We would expect them to adjust their rates, however.
Right. So basically what I heard you say is that we are taxing the utility.
Yes.
But the utility will pass that along to the citizens.
In all likelihood through a rate increase on their part.
But they don't have to. I mean, it's not.
That is
something
also true.
Something that we're doing does not mandate them to pass it along to the citizens.
That is correct.
So they're passing on to the citizens on their own accord through their own actions because they think they need to have money because they just got taxed.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, do you have any direct questions?
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, I have two questions. Wanted to clarify, Matt, the first year would be 3%, and then the second year would be an additional 3% for a total of 6%.
That is correct.
Okay. The second question is one that came up during a meeting that we had, but I'd like to have it clarified. Are there other municipalities who are doing this?
There are. There are. And I can share with council, the text that you have before you tonight is actually an agglomeration from other jurisdictions. Rather than try and reinvent the wheel or try and do it the first time, the language that you have in front of you is language from other jurisdictions. This is not a terribly uncommon tax, but each jurisdiction has to decide for itself what utilities it decides is subject to a utility tax.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilmember McCluskey, do you have any direct questions?
Thank you, Mayor. I just have one question in the general fund that's tied to the electric percentage increase. Does the general fund have any fund restrictions on it, or can it be used?
The general fund has no restrictions. It's for generally any lawful purpose.
Right. So the monies that we get for this tax increase will be up for whatever the city needs are at the time.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay. Thanks.
Councilmember Fleming, do you have any direct questions?
Madam Mayor, I do not have any questions at this time. I'll reserve my comments during the comment section. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, any questions?
Thank you, Mayor Bellisi, and Mayor Pro Tem Worthington does have a question. Matt, let's see. So we currently do use utility taxes now. Do you recall the utilities that we're taxing already?
I can give you a readout, and it's also contained within the legislation. The utilities that we currently levy taxes on, there are 5. Telephone businesses, cable television, natural or manufactured gas, solid waste, and storm drainage.
Excuse me for the coughing. Yeah, thank you. And so why haven't we done this before? And perhaps more specifically, really the question is, what is the distinction between these utilities we're talking about today and most of the utilities that we currently are taxing?
The historical view that had been generally accepted is that utilities that had been provided by another governmental entity, those governmental entities were not subject to taxation. The state Supreme Court earlier this year issued a decision that depending on where you stand, either clarified or changed the law. I prefer to think it clarified that if a governmental entity is providing taxes in its proprietary capacity, that is, it's wearing a business hat, it's subject to taxation just like any of those other utilities that I had identified. The taxes that are the subject of this legislation, the sewer, electric, and water, have historically, and for the most part within the city, are provided by other governmental entities. So this new case that the state Supreme Court decided, clarified for the sake of to the extent that there may have been doubt that those entities were subject to a utility tax just like any other utility within the city.
Yeah. Did the state Supreme Court talk about in their decision about how this tends to or would level the playing field between public and private utilities in such a way that since private utilities, such as typically electrical utilities, and certainly natural gas utilities in our community, deliver their service and their gas, but have to pay a tax in the course of that, where competing electricity against natural gas doesn't pay a tax. Do they talk about how?
I didn't read the state Supreme Court decision with that fine tooth comb. However, I would generally accede to that view that this imposing a tax along these lines certainly does level the playing field for all actors who are providing utilities.
There we go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so very good. There is some competition for heating costs, for example, between those utilities. So, well, thank you. I think that's my questions, but I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I have no additional questions. Staff reports over the last 2 study sessions and the council comments that were received this evening have helped clarify some of my questions. We are open for public comment. each of us received 3 emails in our inboxes from Jared Kono, Dan Graff, and Jana Novak regarding the utility tax public hearing this evening. I hope all you have had an opportunity to read all 3 of their comments. At this time, I'm asking for a motion for council consideration on the utility tax.
Mayor Belisi, this is Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, and I move for the approval of the utility tax as distributed in our packets and on the agenda for this evening. I'm not sure if that was heard.
Yeah, we heard you. I think the mayor, it looks like the mayor is frozen.
Okay, well, I didn't mean to do that. But we'll give the mayor a chance to unfreeze and see if we can proceed from there. Is that stepping into my pro tem role? We'll just give it a moment if that sounds all right to the group. Okay. While she is working on that, let me just assume momentarily the chair role here. And is there a second to the motion?
Yeah, this is Councilmember Keel. I second.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. I'm going to wait for a bit more for the mayor to see if the technical issue that we're having gets resolved, and if not, then we'll go to a vote, I suppose. So is there anyone object to that process?
Discussion will be appropriate.
Thank you. Discussion first, and thank you. These new chairs. So a learning process, but yes, discussion would be appropriate. And thank you for pointing that out. And let's go ahead and start with that discussion. And Councilmember Figueroa, would you lead us off as we go around our usual routine?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Steve Worthington. I do have several comments, and that is, I want to start off with the fact that the 6% or the increase, I think that we came up with a very good solution in trying to make sure that our city is financially stable. One of our key responsibilities, fiduciary responsibilities we have as elected officials, is to make sure that the budget is balanced, not only for today, but also for the future. That there's an opportunity for the budget to be balanced and for the city to be financially secured. That is our one of our number one key responsibilities. And we all know, we've talked about it and even just here before this agenda item about the 1% property tax. That we have a police contract that is has an inflation of 3%, while we're only collecting 1%. We're obviously not getting there, and that's just one areas of city services that we're falling behind. Streets, we barely get enough money just to do the minimum through the streets, through the TBD, that's the card tabs fees, but we know that we're not able to have any monies for any big projects. Along with that, we have many other services and needs that I won't go into length about them, but certainly those costs continue to rise. And we are responsible not to kick the can and let some future council members or our community members, more importantly, have to suffer, because we all know, whether it be street or maintenance or repairs or any other services, the more you delay the maintenance of anything, it will cost more if you don't maintain it now. So I want to be part of a solution for now and then into the future, and making sure that it doesn't cost 2 or 3, 4 more than it should have cost. That being said, I'm thankful that we considered the 3% as a cushion instead of a whole 6% right off the bat. But both at the end of the day, at 6% in 2 years from now, it still does represent what I consider a minimum amount. Yes, there's always, I'm one of those that say we're just being taxed to death. Everybody talks about a cup of coffee here, a cup of coffee there, but you know what? After a while, that's one damn expensive cup of coffee. And so, just like everything else in life, we have to pay what's the market cost is. Otherwise, people would not be providing those services or products to us if we will not be willing to pay for it. And we have a responsibilities for some core services that we have to provide, and we have to maintain a budget for that. The 6%, even the 3% for the first year, represents a really minimal amount, which I would like to see that explain a little bit better than what I can do. But I do know that it's in conjunction with what we have said about there's a TBD that we are charging $35 per vehicle, per boat, motorcycle. So most families have 2 cars. Some family have 3 cars with a motorcycle or 2. So they're paying $35 car tab fees on all those. And we're reducing that to $10, a very significant reduction in place that will be paying a utility tax if we pass this. That is, I consider a lot less. The difference between the 10 and 35 is $25. I believe, if my memory serves me right, the utility tax, even at the 6%, is somebody help me out here, but I think it's like, somebody help me out. What is that amount?
$11.
For $11. So about $11 on the average. Some will pay more because of the utilities they use. Some will pay less. Depends on the utility usage for those water, sewer, and power. But at the end of the day, on the average, it's $11, and that's a year. And so, is that a year or a month, Leslie?
Per month.
Per month, okay. And so, I think at the end of the day, it spreads out the cost of all these services to a lot more citizens who ultimately use the roads, use all the services that we have, use the police, you name it, everything that we are going to be paying from the colors of money. The majority, 99.9 of those living will be young, old, or anything else in between, use the services. When we only have those that are paying for the services, like especially the repairs and maintenance of our roads, and it's only the burden is only on those that have a car, I think it's unfair, mainly because we have to maintain and do the sidewalks and bicycle lanes. Well, people with bicycles, which we do maintain those roads for bicycle lanes, do not pay our car tabs. So I think this is a much fairer way to spread the cost. It makes it less, makes it a lot more even, and I'm supportive that there's a reduction, which has always been a thorn in my side of having to do that, but I understand there's a cost to do business, and I'm glad to see that being reduced from $35 to $10 per vehicle, and in addition to that, the $10 will be earmarked for projects, capital projects that are necessary that we never have been able to build up reserves for. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I
Councilmember
apologize.
Figueroa, thank you. Good. And I think, is that the mayor I'm hearing? I hope so.
Yep, I apologize. My computer crashed. I don't have internet access for some reason on my computer. So thankfully, our city clerk has allowed me to utilize her computer. Councilmember Keel, do you have any comments at this time?
Yes, Councilmember Keel. Thank you, Mayor. I was going to ask about what the payment average was, and we have that $11. But even with the $11 a month on average, I want to be clear. My understanding that is $11 that the utility may probably more than likely will impose on citizens. That is not $11 more a month that the city is imposing on citizens. And I in my mind, that's a really clear and very important distinction. We are not imposing a tax on the citizens. We're imposing a tax, if this passes, on the utility. Now, whenever I say that, people always push back and their eyes roll back in their head and they say, well, you know, it's gonna be passed away, so you're splitting hairs and you really shouldn't say that. And I disagree. I think, you know, if we're going to be in this business that we're in, we have to be very clear about what our role is and what we're doing and what we're about. And it's when we blur the lines and try to get into other people's businesses where we get in trouble, and in my opinion. And so that's why I think we'd be very, very clear that this is a tax that the city is imposing on these utilities and not on citizens. And if the other argument were to hold true, which I don't think it does because it's not very logical, then why the last thing we just did was the 1% tax? Well, we're imposing it on citizens, actually. Well, why are people mad at us when they really should be mad at the police? Because the only reason why we're raising 1% is because the police is raising theirs 3%. So, you know, we have to be logical in everything that we do, in my opinion. And if we start, you know, mixing stuff up, then that's where we as a city get ourselves in trouble. We are not imposing a tax on citizens. We're imposing a tax on the utilities. And that's what we're doing. And I think it's important, secondarily, to do this on the utilities, because it does to Mayor Pro Tem's point in his comment or questions earlier is that this does make the playing field even now, because now we've got private utilities that have always been taxed by us, and now we've got public utilities that now should be taxed by us. The third thing I think this is important is because even though if and when the utility passes this on to the citizens and to their ratepayers, it'll be on average $11 to the household. But for the businesses and other large players in our city, that number is going to be much larger. And those dollars that we get into our city from those taxes, from those much larger costs, we can use those dollars to fold back into pay for the services that we need to deliver to the city. So it's kind of like now the $11 that I'm paying more in my utility tax that the utility is imposing on me, my $11 really has been leveraged to maybe 5 or 6 times that, because other large entities are paying that same tax. So I'm supportive of it because we are taxing the utility and we're not taxing the citizens. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Council Member Pro Tem Lee, your comments, please.
Council Member Pro Tem Lee, I too have read the public comments. I understand their concern to a citizen. It's of little consequence whether the tax is 1% or 30%. It's still part of the money that they have to expend and they don't have it. However, as Councilmember Keel said, that they're getting a service, and so services cost money. Also, I've done independent research on this issue, and I don't see how we can put it off. Director Faison and Director Blaisdell have done an excellent job in providing a conservative projection of our expenses and our revenue that will be generated by this tax. And I believe that they're putting it off. The numbers won't change. They're going to stay the same. So I don't believe that putting it off is an option. I believe that it's needed, and it will keep our city on sound financial footing into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember McCluskey.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, this tax will be probably well over $130 a year per household. It will also increase the cost of our goods and services to our citizens as well. In a time that we're trying to recover from COVID, we're not even in economic recovery yet. And I believe the economic recovery will go well into 2021. I do believe we need to fix our shortfalls and that this plan is a viable plan, but also remember that as utility taxes increase, we are at a percentage rate on this. It's not a fixed rate, it's a percentage rate. And so all of that will also increase as well. And if you don't have a car, you're going to pay the full fare. You're not going to get the discount of the TBD. And so if you are a senior citizen and you don't own a car, you have to still fully pay that. We also need to remember that we have given Utilities CARES Act to people that need it, that can't pay their utilities right now, and their rents and their mortgages. And that's a huge issue. I speak to people in my job, I speak to people on a daily basis about what tremendous hardships that they're going through right now. We may think it's a small percentage, but we don't really know until we're into our economic recovery in 2021 as to the full impact of what's currently happening now. I also am concerned that the increase of $2 million a year in the general fund, that there isn't any allocations for that for any future shortfalls. I think some of those things, if we do go forward with this, should be considered in a separate fund so that the intent and the goodwill and the savings for our future needs and services will still be there, that they won't be expended in other areas that we believe we need prior to 2030 or 2035. So I also am really emphatic that we need conversations with our citizens so they can fully understand what we're doing and that we don't appear to be authoritative body of council members, that we are doing it for the good of our community and our future benefit, because we need to obviously come up with the shortfalls that we see forecasting. And I do also want to commend Ms. Blaisdell and also Mr. Faison for their excellent job in trying to figure out how to create a viable, sustainable, and long-term funding source for our city. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Fleming, your comments, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do not believe it could have been said any better than what Councilmember McCluskey just stated on that. I do want to thank all the council members for their comments and appreciate it. As the new kid on the block here, I would say my concerns in my brief 11 months on the council, it would appear that we are a council that hasn't met a tax or a fee that we didn't like. And that I find a little bit concerning. You know, back to Councilmember Keel's comment about trying to make it clear to the citizens about who's taxing who. You know, you can take a pig and you can paint it any color you want and dress it up, but at the end of the day, it's still a pig. So, you know, I think we should, there should be no mistake on anyone's part. Yeah, this is painted as a tax on the utilities, but at the end of the day, it really is a tax on the citizens of our community. I too agree with the comment that Councilmember McCluskey said that this is a good plan. It's a viable plan. As Mr. Faison had once said, it's a temporary fix, not a permanent fix, and we need to keep that in mind. But timing is everything when we're trying to implement a good plan. You know, our citizens don't have the luxury or the option of refusing their utilities. Those are basic fundamental necessities of life. And so, you know, whether and they don't have the option to say, hey, I don't want to pay the higher rate. So, you know, when you look at a 6% increase, you know, we can say, yeah, no, it's only 3%. No, it's not. It's 6%. You know, again, let there be no mistake. This is a 6% hit on our citizens at a time when I also agree, because I talk to folks every day out there, when they can least afford it. You know, we just, back to the CARES Act that we just spent passing through to the citizens in need and giving money to those who couldn't afford their rents and who couldn't afford their utilities. And now we're going to turn around and hit them with a tax. So, you know, right now, you know, it's just another tax along with the other taxes and fees that we've passed. And I'm thinking, you know, this is just not the good time for it. So I too have my reservations about what could otherwise be a very good plan being passed at the present time. So those are my comments, and thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, your comments.
Thank you, Mayor Belisi, Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, and a few comments. And we've had a number of good observations as we've had our discussion on this tonight. And it's a terribly important issue for us. We've talked a little bit about it. I feel like we need to help folks understand that are watching this. I mean, I've read the comments from our citizens. I know we have people engaged in this subject, and I assume they're watching this as well. And it is the challenge that we have is, as my other council members, some of the other council members have talked about, as we project into the future, as we approach the 10th year from now, we start running out of funds to be able to sustain our current level of service in police and other areas. The police is the largest piece of our budget. It is the single largest expense is public safety. And it's in the magnitude of currently about $4.5 million. It's a challenge to be able to feed that. And but we need our officers. We want our officers, and they do a heck of a job. And they often are putting their own personal welfare on the line for us to be protected and feel safe. And generally, from the comments that all of our council members have made and that are familiar with, we know our citizens are interested in having more police officers. If we do this, and if we pass this utility tax, it doesn't add more officers today or necessarily tomorrow, but it fills a problem for the foreseeable future where we don't run out. And it helps us look to the future to find resolutions to address that. That, I think, makes it very appealing. It is a tax. And the reality is it brings money in and it takes money out of pockets of our citizens and our businesses. One possible we have been in during this difficult time, we've been sharing funds that have become available to the city, to our citizens and to our businesses to help those that we can and to give them a little bit of a leg up. And I hope that has helped. I really think it has from the ones I've spoken to. the individuals and the businesses. And so I'm glad we can help there. But at the same time, when we have a continuing economic threat or possible reduction in services in the future, we need to figure out if we're willing to take that or if we're willing to take steps to protect our line of business. That is to say, to do the things that we should do that are key to what we as a community want, that are key to what a local government does. And police services are part of that, and general government is part of that as well. In the past, we have made cuts to our services, and we stopped doing things so that we could more shore up our finances and be able to move along. We did that because the second highest expense in the city is debt. That's not usual. Most cities, sure, almost all borrow, but most of them haven't borrowed to the extent that we did have on the line. Most of them aren't spending the second largest expense, paying back the money they borrowed. But over the first 20 or so years of this community, there was a lot of deficit spending. It was invested in new projects that would hope to grow taxes, but it was also spent, or tax base, I should say, but it was also spent on paying for current services, awaiting that tax growth to take place. And we are still and will continue to be paying that bill. And it's a bill that we all share in the community. If this is a way for us to share that, and as much as I wish we didn't have that bill, as much as I wish police services and the rest were free and that they weren't growing faster than our regular revenue would be, we actually have to find new revenue sources to be able to sustain what we do today. This provides that. This delivers a way for us to fund our current level of service into the foreseeable future. And it gives us some certainty and the ability to move forward. I think that's it's real challenging here to talk about adding a new tax. I do think this tax, though, is on the utilities. I also believe that this tax levels the playing field so that it's equal between privately owned utilities, such as the gas company, and the electrical company that is publicly owned and hitherto has not had to pay a tax on its earnings or its gross revenues in this case. I think those are other things that come out of this that really ultimately fill an appropriate thing for us to do and level some playing fields, provide certainty in our community or what its financial service needs are going to be into the future. I think this gives us some things that we should be see as an opportunity. And I've come to see it as that opportunity. So thank you for a chance to comment.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. At this time, I will reserve my comments. I see that Councilman kind of behind on our agenda timing. Councilmember Keel, you are muted, sir.
Well, and you were breaking up, so I couldn't tell
We're
what you were
having
doing.
issues here.
Okay. All right, super. Yeah, I just real quickly, I appreciate
Our internet's going down again.
what Mayor Pro Tem was talking about just now, and it's so important for citizens to realize, at least from my perspective, is that this council, for the 8 years that I've been on this council, 9 now at the end of this year that I've been on this council, we have been playing catch up and make up and correct things up from where this city was from all the years before the 9 that I've been on it. Up to beyond our head in debt, no town center to show for it, nothing to show, nothing at all. And with this council and with the staff, we worked and fought and scrapped and scraped and pulled things together to actually have that town center come out of the ground. And we are playing catch up. This is what we're doing. I mean, we were handed a bad hand, and it was bad all the way around. and we are just now scrapping to get out of it. And we have to be about our business. We cannot, mealy mouth around and kick the can and try to bend over and be Mickey Mouse about stuff. I mean, we have to be about the city's business. That has to be our key number one priority. We are not putting a tax on people. We're putting a tax on utility. And that's just the fact. And if the utility does it, then citizens should go to the utility and tell them not to raise it, because they don't have to. They make billions of dollars. They do not have to do this tax. They can eat it, but they don't want to. And it's an easy way for them not to want to try to blame it on us when it's we're taxing them because they're digging up our streets and well, not in this case, but because they are doing business in our city, which is just a normal way of doing things. And we need to stop trying to own somebody else's problem and allowing people to be mad at us for something that somebody else is doing. The same thing about the state too as well. I mean, the state collects money, they sweep funds all the time. They keep money that that the law in the original plan was supposed to come to the cities. And we all know that they keep those funds. And then they say, oh, we're going to give you councilmatic authority to go raise taxes on people like the car tabs. I mean, the money that they keep up at the state, if they just gave us the money that is due us and didn't keep it, we'd have no problems at all. But because they keep it and then they throw us a bone and say, you can raise taxes on people councilmatic, and then when we go do that, then people are mad at us. So I just really want to encourage my colleagues, we need to get our head in this game and not allow people to do stuff to us, but call it like it is and do the business that we need to be about. So anyway, I'm done. Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor, are you with us there? So just trying to see if she'll be joining us in a moment. Staff, do you have any insight into if the mayor is going to be with us shortly?
Councilmember Worthington, Mayor Pro Tem, they will be moving to Emmy's wire desk location and should be back with you shortly.
They're here.
All right.
Oh, they're here. There you go.
They're here. Wonderful. So Councilmember Keel has completed his comment, and I don't see any further hands myself. Mayor, I think if you're settled in, we may be ready for a vote.
Yes, we are. At this time, I'll ask our city clerk to conduct a roll call vote.
Councilmember Figueroa,
Councilmember Figueroa, aye.
Councilmember Keel,
Councilmember Keel, aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Lee,
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, aye.
Councilmember McCluskey,
Councilmember McCluskey, no.
Councilmember Fleming,
Councilmember Fleming, nay.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington,
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, aye.
Mayor Bellisi.
Mayor Bellisi, aye.
The motion passes 5-2.
5-2. Okay, thank you. At this time, our next item on the agenda is our proposed 2021-22 biennial budget and capital improvement. I will ask Ms. Blaisdell for her staff report.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm Leslie Blaisdell, Finance Director. The 2021-2022 proposed budget is a balanced and conservative budget that assumes a continuation of 2020 levels of service to the community. It continues providing the best service we can, meeting all our contractual, legal, and debt obligations, while exercising prudent cash management and maintaining our strategic reserve. Any changes that are made during our various budget review processes will be included in the final documents provided to Council for budget approval In preparing the budget, we continue to be conservative with our revenue projections for the biennium, and the proposed budget does include the increase to the city's ad valorem property tax in each year of the biennial budget. On the expenditure side, it's a status quo budget with a modest level of inflation assumed for supplies and services. Pursuant to our budget policies, tonight we're going to focus our time and review the CIP and provide cost estimates, impacts on the operating budget and project schedule, and we'll also take public comment this evening. So if we can put up slide number 1, we'll start with the Parks CIP. The Parks CIP budget includes 2 projects. Funding on both of those projects is dependent on grants from the Recreation and Conservation Office, and awards of their funding won't be announced until April of 2021. So both projects are included in the adopted PROS plan, and we've included them in this budget as a placeholder. You can see we have 2 projects, the Cirque Park improvements. The estimated project cost is $727,257, of which half of it would be grant funded and the other half would come from our parks impact fees. That project would begin bidding within 2 months of any funding confirmation, with construction slated to start in late 2021. Regarding impacts to the operating budget, increasing the size of the playground would require additional cleaning and safety inspection time, estimated at about 52 hours per year. The skate park concrete features would reduce inspection, maintenance, and repair time by 80 hours per year. And asphalt paving of the gravel trail would also reduce maintenance time by another 24 hours per year. Exercise equipment included as part of the project would require safety inspections, repairs, and maintenance estimated at 18 hours per year. The estimates we have at this point would be a labor savings of about $1,675 a year, but maintenance and repair would be estimated at $2,000 a year, resulting in a net of $325. The second project is the Curran Playground. Bidding is expected to begin within 2 months of funding confirmation and construction to begin in late 2021. This will be a new playground. Weekly cleaning, maintenance, and safety checks are estimated at 45 hours per year, $2,200, and maintenance and cleaning supplies of $500 a year. Total estimated cost is $2,700 per year. So those are the only 2 projects in Parks CIP. If we go to slide number 2, the Public Works CIP includes 7 projects in the proposed budget. All of the projects are consistent with the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan and are included in the city's 6-year TIP. The first project is a swim project, Brookside. That project is estimated at $2.4 million and is currently in design. But based on limited funding availability, the project will be planned and constructed in phases based on funding resources. Currently, we have $1,150,000, and that all comes from surface water management funds, which are restricted funds and can only be used for surface water management projects. Several times in the last few years, the storm drainage system was overwhelmed and caused flooding of Grandview Drive at Olympic, flooding of 2 duplex units, heavy erosion of Brookside ditch line, threatening road stability, and flooding residential garage on Brookside Way. Each occurrence costs thousands of dollars in staff time and repairs, in addition to private property damage and insurance filings with our insurance carrier. The second project is the 67th Avenue Improvements Project. The design and right-of-way acquisition phases are included in this budget cycle. These phases began in the previous budget cycle and will be completed by the end of 2022. The work under this budget cycle for this project is limited to design and right-of-way acquisition, and so there are no long-term operation and maintenance costs associated with these activities. Third project, Grandview, is the project 35th Street, Grandview to 67th. The project involves design and right-of-way acquisition phases of work only. Work on this project began in the previous budget cycle and will be completed by the end of 2022. The work under this budget cycle is limited to design and right-of-way, and there are no long-term maintenance costs available with these activities. Next is the 35th Street Phase 1. The project is scheduled to begin in late 2021 and be completed by the end of 2022. This project results in an increase of planter strip and sidewalk maintenance as impacts to the operating budget. The cost is offset by a reduction of shoulder maintenance costs, and the new street lighting will have annual power costs. But as part of this project, the existing Cobra head lighting will be removed and replaced with LED, which is a much more cost-effective option. The Chambers Creek Road, Chambers Creek Lane, Phase 1, is scheduled to begin in late 2021 and be completed by the end of 2022. The project will result in an increase of planter strip and sidewalk maintenance and adds a signalized crosswalk. The maintenance cost is offset by a reduction of shoulder maintenance costs, and the new street lighting and signal will have annual power costs, but also be replaced with LED, which is also would result in a cost savings. The Lakewood Drive overlay, that project is scheduled to begin in mid-2021 and be complete by early 2022. New roadway surfacing, which extends the life of the roadway. This project will reduce long-term maintenance costs of the roadway. And the last one is the cultural shift to active transportation. This project is scheduled to begin in 2021 and be completed by the end of 2022. This is a multi-agency project focused on transportation demand management programs in regional growth centers, manufacturing and industrial centers, local centers of importance, and the corridors serving them. The City of Tacoma is the lead agency working in partnership with Fircrest, Puyallup, and University Place. The agencies will implement the TDM, Transportation Demand Management Program, that includes education, outreach, support, and safety campaigns. This project has no long-term maintenance costs. And you can see in the slide the total project cost and the funding sources for each of those projects. Grant funding, surface water management, or real estate excise tax, which is also a restricted revenue and to be used for capital improvement projects. So that concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions about the CIP or any other budget-related questions.
Okay, this is a public hearing. There is nothing for consideration this evening. So are there any council members with direct questions of the report for Leslie? Okay, Council Member Pro Tem Lee.
Thank you, Director Blaisdell. I have two questions. One, you said that the current playground was the new playground. I wasn't aware there was a playground at the current apple orchard.
There is not. This project would be adding a playground. So
okay, I see. Okay.
Yeah, completion of this would add a new playground.
And I was kind of baffled by the cultural shift to active transpirations. What does that mean?
I am going to defer to our city engineer, Jack Eklund, on this one.
Yep. Hello, council members. And I was expecting that that one probably would raise some eyebrows. It's a little bit unusual to have that. It's in a list of capital projects, because really it's more of a program for encouraging active transportation. It also has some encouraging biking and walking. There's an element in which you would help provide bike racks to businesses, that sort of thing. Normally, that type of program you wouldn't expect to see in a capital project budget. However, because we got these funds in partnership with Save Tacoma, but through PSRC, through their in their the grant cycle, the countywide grant funding, it's better for us to be consistent in managing those grants and have that in our capital project. It fits more in line with the funding program in which we see them. But ultimately, it's like a regional coordination effort for encouraging active transportation.
Okay, I just, the cultural part kind of threw me. I didn't know if, you know, we were going to have signs in Farsi or something that would, you know, make it more. Anyway, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You can blame that on our friends in Tacoma. They came up with the name of the project.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, it's open for public comment. We do not have any citizens on our phone line at this time. We will be having another public hearing on this at our next meeting on November 16th with anticipated adoption scheduled for December 7th. So just wanted to let you know at this time, we will conclude this presentation and this public hearing this evening, but not close the public comment section. So at this time, we are on our next agenda item, which is council consideration for the Transportation Benefit District fee. May we have a staff report from our attorney, Matt Kaiser, please.
Thank you again, Madam Mayor, members of the council, Matt Kaiser, City Attorney. As I indicated earlier in the meeting, this is a companion piece of legislation to the utility tax ordinance, which council previously acted on earlier this evening. The thrust of this legislation, if adopted, would reduce the currently imposed $35 per vehicle license fee down to $10 at some point following council adoption. As the colloquy went earlier this evening, I want to draw council's attention to section 2 of the draft legislation that you have in your packet. At an appropriate time, there will be a need for a council amendment to amend the current language for the effective date of those. Sorry, I've got windows here going. For those notices mailed in 2022 to amend that to 2021. The Department of Licensing does require a minimum 6-month lead time in order to get those out so that the fee would otherwise be effective. But this legislation largely tracks the prior legislation that council passed back in 2018. Last on this topic, the one other thing I want to draw council's attention to, because this matter is somewhat linked to the utility tax legislation that council passed earlier this evening, because if there is indeed a successful challenge to the utility tax, while I don't think there would be or should be, because we're juggling multiple pieces of taxes and fees around, that if there is a successful challenge, that the fee would otherwise revert back to the $35, and that's identified in section 8 of the TBD resolution, which council can keep or cut at its pleasure. With that, I'm happy to conclude my remarks and stand for any questions and comments that council may have.
Okay, at this time, I will open the round robin for council questions. Council member Figueroa, any questions at this time?
Madam Mayor?
Yeah.
Excuse me, do you want a motion on the floor first, or do you want to go to comments before that?
Let's do comments first, and we'll do the motion for the amendment later. So, Councilmember Figueroa, do you have any questions at this time?
Yes, Matt, if this does not, and it didn't occur to me when we were voting on the utility tax, but if this TBT reduction does not pass, what happens with, because I only supported the utility tax on the condition that this passed, but it didn't cross my mind that if this didn't pass for whatever reason, does this take away the utility tax automatically that we just passed?
No. This requires the utility tax, but the utility tax does not require the TBD.
Okay, so I didn't tie that one in tight enough, I guess. Okay.
Okay. Councilmember Keel, do you have any questions? You are muted.
Yeah, my first question is, where's my mute button? No, Mayor, no questions.
Okay. Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, any questions at this time?
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember McCluskey, any questions at this time?
Councilmember McCluskey doesn't have any questions. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Councilmember Fleming, any questions at this time?
Councilmember Fleming has no questions at this time. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, any questions at this time?
Yeah, yes. Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, a question for Councilmember Figueroa, Councilmember Figueroa, would you feel more secure in what may happen here if it doesn't pass, that I would join you in a motion for reconsideration of the utility tax? Would that bring you a little more certainty? Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay. I have no questions either. Thank you for the information. We'll have the, Mr. Kaiser, should we do the public hearing first or the amendment first?
I would suggest the public hearing first, following the conclusion of the public hearing, make the motion to adopt the resolution, then make the motion for the amendment.
Okay. All right. Again, we had no public comment directed at the Transportation Benefit District, nor do we have any public in attendance at our meeting this evening. So with that, I will close the public comment section and go on to council consideration for the resolution as provided. May I have a motion? And then we do the amendment.
Yes, Mayor Lisa, you may have a motion. It would be my honor. Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, motion to approve the resolution reducing the Transportation Benefit District fee from $35 to $10. Currently as drafted. I will have an amendment if there's a second.
Okay. We have a second.
Madam Mayor, for discussion, I will second this motion.
Okay.
Councilman Gill.
All right. Now the
Mayor
amendment.
Belisi, if I may offer an amendment to the primary motion, which would change the effective date from 2022 to an effective date of 2021.
Second.
Councilmember Keel, I second.
Okay. Any discussion regarding the amendment? Seeing none, well, we need to vote on it. So our city clerk will do a roll call vote on the amendment, and then we can discuss the amended motion, the amended resolution.
Councilmember Figueroa,
Councilmember Figueroa, aye.
Councilmember Keel,
Councilmember Keel, aye.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee,
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, aye.
Councilmember McCluskey,
Councilmember McCluskey, aye.
Councilmember Fleming,
Councilmember Fleming, aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington,
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, aye.
Mayor Belisi.
Mayor Belisi, aye.
The motion carries.
Okay, motion carries. So now we are open for this council consideration of the amended motion. And with that, I will go on our roll call. Councilmember Figueroa, do you have any comments at this time?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I think it's a way of balancing. It's a balancing act. I think, like I said in the previous consideration with the utility tax, I think it's a much fairer tax. Even though I understand Councilmember Keel that is the utility tax directly, and they don't have to pass it on to the consumers. But historically, we found that to be true with any of the utilities. They pass it on to the citizens. So that is expected. But even with that, I do believe that this reducing this and providing for the utility tax to be enacted is a much fairer way to spread the cost in our city, in our community, and to, most importantly, as I said before, to assist in making sure that our citizens are being treated fair, and our responsibility of providing for a balanced budget for now and into the future, that we do it in the most safe and least painful way to our citizens. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Keel, any comments at this time?
Great, thank you, Mayor. Councilman Keel, I do have some comments. I haven't voted for this TBD. The first time it came before us to go to $25, I didn't vote for this. When it came back again to go to $35, I did not support it as well. So in either case, did I support this TBD tax, just because of the way that, in my estimation, how it came about and the impacts that it would have on our citizens. And so, and as I said before, I'm not really a tax, for whatever reason type person. The only tax I've ever voted for since being on this council is 1%. Every time it's come up, because of what it's used for. And then tonight, this utility tax, because again, for what it's used for. I'm not at all supportive of the TBD, and I was going to vote for it because it's reducing. I wish the number was 0. So going from, going down to $10 is getting closer to the number I want as far as 0. So very supportive. I'd be interested to hear further conversation from my colleagues about this tax, because the one thing that I didn't anticipate was it reverting back up to $35 if the utility tax was successfully, overturned or something like that. So that's a wrinkle that I didn't know, and so that's giving me pause on my position on this right now. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, any comments at this time?
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, I have no comments at this time.
Okay. Councilmember McCluskey, any comments at this time?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Well, the utility taxes has passed, and I guess this is a grand consolation prize. Will be some cost savings, and also our citizens will still maintain their streets through the sewer portion of our utility tax. And of course, it is relatively unheard of where a public entity, once taxes are imposed, that they reduce the taxes. So I thought this was a very novel idea. I think Councilmember Figueroa may have offered this to the table. And I think I like that. Even though it is a consolation prize, I'll frame it that way. I'll take it for what it's worth. So thank you.
Councilmember Fleming, any comments at this time?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do, anytime we have an opportunity to reduce a tax, I can support that. Again, following Councilmember McCloskey, usually I just go, yep, I agree with her. It is kind of a consolation prize, but to the point that Councilmember Figueroa made earlier, this catch that says if the tax is successfully challenged, that it will roll back from $10 to $35. I think the council needs to keep in mind that that's the way this piece of legislation has been drafted, but it doesn't prevent the council from intervening should that challenge occur. And we can keep it at $10. So, but it's a conversation and certainly a discussion for another time. because I don't like to speculate on the what ifs. But I think just because it may or may not pass tonight doesn't mean that it or challenged that we have that option still on the table. So I think this is one that's okay to move forward and support. So thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, any comments at this time?
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, thank you, Mayor. It is unusual to find a tax rollback and reduction, and I'm glad we can do that. And I'm certainly interested in maintaining a balance in revenues to services. And as we've calculated the numbers, this allows us to be in balance. It isn't the most we can get. That isn't the point. It's to get to the balance that allows us to do business and deliver services to the citizens. So being able to reduce this makes sense. Certainly I'm all for that. Thank you.
Thank you. I too am in support of this. However, I am still concerned that we are just maintaining status quo, both on our staffing levels, our police services, and the other funds, the way we are using it. It's just to maintain what we have here. We still have some long-term obligations that aren't going to be fully funded. Our transportation projects, even with the TBD at the $35 a vehicle, did not fund the needs that were out there in our community for street rehab in the residential areas where we don't have the opportunity to get grant funding. So for us, we still need to educate our citizens at what it costs for us to maintain our services in the city and figure out from our citizens exactly what level of service they do want, because you can't have your potholes fixed or your street redeveloped and think it isn't going to cost some money somewhere. So I am going to support this, but we still have that tough conversation that we have to have with our community regarding levels of police services, levels of our street maintenance that are needed, the level of maintenance and upkeep in our park system, all of which cost money to generate. So we are maintaining our budget by doing this. We are providing a steady source of income that will ensure at least what we currently have will be maintained. So I will support it from that standpoint. So with that, I will ask our city clerk to conduct a roll call vote.
Councilmember Figueroa,
Councilmember Figueroa, aye.
Councilmember Keel,
Councilmember Keel, because of the rollback, I'm going to say no.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee,
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, aye.
Councilmember McCluskey,
Councilmember McCluskey, aye.
Councilmember Fleming,
Councilmember Fleming, aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington,
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, aye.
Mayor Belisi.
Mayor Belisi, aye.
The motion passes 6-1.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next item on the agenda is our city manager and council comments report. We are currently about 20 minutes behind in our schedule, and we are scheduled to go till 9:30. So I would like our council members to be cognizant of that as we go through our council reports here. So with that, I will ask our city manager, Steve Sugg, for his report. Mr. Sugg.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. Briefly, wanted to give you a little update on the coronavirus relief funds distribution that the council approved these funds both in July, the first round, on July 6th, and on another second round, you approved an additional amount of funds on October 5th. So we are in the process of distributing the second round of funding. As you remember, just as a quick reminder, $346,000 were distributed under phase 1 round of grants to 65 businesses. That was done back in the July-August timeframe. That was from the money the council approved on July 6th. And then on October 5th, you approved for distribution another $300,000 of relief funds to businesses. And well, I'm pleased to announce that 55 businesses have qualified for phase 2 round of grants, and those will be checks will be distributed this month. So I'm pleased to announce that. On the human services side, there was funding that I reported on previously, helping families. Council appropriated $100,000 of human services funding, $85,000 in direct assistance on rent, utilities, and childcare under first round. And then you approved another $100,000 for the second round, and we're in the midst of finalizing that second agreement. To date, the Families Unlimited Network, which is our partner in distributing monies to needy families, they've distributed monies to 43 families in the amount of $88,462, of which rental assistance was approximately $77,000 and utility assistance of $12,000. So they're making good progress at the Families Unlimited Network on that. More to come. We'll have additional report on that. And then also CARES funding went to support the distribution of and storage of food boxes in partnership with USDA's Farmers to Families program. This was done through our church in University Place. So funding was provided to the church in the total of $13,450 for forklift rentals to move pallets of boxes off of the semi-truck, a refrigerated truck rental, $8,000 to keep groceries food safe after the semi leaves, 3 rain safe water pop-up tents, rain safe and safe weather pop-up tents to cover the grocery boxes as they're distributed and weather becomes more inclement. Over the past 3 weeks, this is an amazing number, over 3,000 boxes of fresh groceries were distributed, and this fed over 16,000 residents. Furthermore, each week the school counselors from Evergreen Primary and UP Primary have come to load up boxes of groceries for their school families. Our church estimates that they will be able to feed approximately 49,000 residents through the remainder of the year. Mayor, Council, that concludes my report for tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Sugg. And we'll go on to council comments. Councilmember Figueroa, do you have any comments at this time?
Councilmember Figueroa has no comments.
Okay. Councilmember Keel, any comments at this time or report outs?
Councilmember Keel, none at this time.
Okay. Councilmember Pro Tem Lee.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, I have no comments. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember McCluskey.
Councilmember McCluskey doesn't have any comments at this time. Thank you.
All right, we're making up time. Councilmember Fleming, do you have any comments or report outs at this time?
Okay, I'll just use up all the time here. How's that? Since all my distinguished council members have yielded their time on the floor. No, Madam Mayor, I have no comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, any comments or report outs at this time?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Pro Tem Worthington has 2 quick report outs. Just wanted to let you know that I did attend the Rainier Communications Commission meeting where we discussed the renewing of or the creating a new franchise for various Rainier Communication Commissions and Comcast. That's underway and in negotiations. There'll be more to council as the opportunities are appropriate. I also attended the Puget Sound Regional Council General Assembly last week. All of these, of course, are virtual, and participated in the Vision 2050 discussion, and ultimately that document was approved by 96% of the membership. So Vision 2050 is now approved, if you haven't heard that, and will be working on its way into our various jurisdictions soon. Beyond that, and then I'm pleased to hear of our community's fine work in distributing the needed food and, to folks. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. I only have one reminder of council. November 23rd, that is an off meeting. It is scheduled to be an executive session. So please mark your calendar, 6:30 that evening. We're going into executive discussion, and make sure that you have it on your schedule. That's the only reminder I have at this time. So I will close this portion, and we are on to study session, our proposed 2021-22 biennial budget. This is our third study for passage of an ordinance regarding our budget. We'll get to hear from Ms. Blaisdell again.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. As the Mayor said, this evening is our third and final study session on the 21-22 proposed biennial budget. Earlier this evening, we held a second public hearing. We have one final public hearing scheduled for November 16th, and the budget is scheduled for council consideration on December 7th. The budget is a balanced and conservative budget that assumes continuation of 2020's levels of service to the community. We've been conservative with revenue projections for the biennium due to the still largely unknown continued impacts from COVID-19. The expenditure budget is a status quo budget with a modest level of inflation assumed for expenditures. Any changes made to the budgeted numbers during the budget process that began at our meeting on October 5th will be presented to council and included in the ordinance that will be considered. Just to give you an update, at the time of this meeting, those adjustments would be to adjust the alarm permit fee revenues pursuant to Ordinance 734 adopted on October 5th. Adjust the false alarm fee revenues pursuant to the ordinance adopted on October 5th. The additional utility tax, which was approved earlier this evening. The reduction to the TBD fee, also approved earlier this evening. And then there would be the addition or the reinstallation of the pavement maintenance expense budget to the street fund. So those are the changes that have occurred throughout our many meetings and discussions. This concludes my report, and I'll open it up to any questions related to the 21-22 proposed biennial budget.
Okay. This is a study session. We have gone over this and reviewed it twice before. Are there any additional comments or questions that council has at this time? I'm not going to go through the round robin on this one. I'll just allow you to raise your hand. Councilmember Keel.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Leslie, thank you for your report. And you may have said this, and I just wasn't keen enough to pick up on it. But can you just give us a quick layout of now that 976 has been, gone through the Supreme Court, and can you talk us through, we save those dollars and now we just kind of fold them back into, and then all the other mitigations that we came up with is, because we didn't have it. Can you talk us through all of that right now, how that money's being?
Yes. Those funds were budgeted in the 2020 budget, but we did not transfer them to the street fund, which is where they were initially intended to go. We left them in the TBD fund pending the outcome of I-976. So we would have had the ability to either refund them if it had not been overturned, but because it was overturned, those funds will now go back into the street fund, and those funds are used as part of the pavement maintenance budget for overlays and chip seals. At the time that the court decision came in, it was about $550,000. And then the remaining funds that will come in the rest of this year will go directly into the street fund as they were originally budgeted to do.
Okay, and all those numbers are reflected in the numbers that we're looking at now?
The numbers you are looking at now do not include those numbers. These are any of the changes that have been made throughout the process will be put into the new document that will come to council on the 7th.
So, okay, great, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other council questions at this time? Raise your hand. Okay, not seeing any hands raised. I'm assuming that Leslie Blaisdell has done a wonderful job at explaining the budget. Congratulations. Okay. So with that, good evening, Leslie. You can sign off at this time. We'll go to the next item, which is our form-based code. It's our second study session for passage of an ordinance. I'm going to ask our Planning Director, David Swindell, and our Planning Commission Chair, Cliff Quisenberry, to come forward for this presentation.
Good evening, members of the City Council. I'm getting a bad network quality message, so it just went away. Hopefully you can hear me. We have a PowerPoint presentation to provide. Linda, can you bring that up, or Amanda? Okay, at the last study session, I introduced a number of proposed amendments to the city zoning code in order to make it consistent with and implement the form-based, or rather the regional growth sub-area plan. We just barely got started with the form-based code itself when we ran out of time. Next slide, please. So the regulating plan and the storefront overlay are akin to a zoning map that identifies the locations of zoning districts within the regional growth center, as well as a storefront overlay. To remind you, the storefront overlay is shows street frontages where retail or commercial use is required to be developed on the ground floor. It does not need to be occupied initially for that use, but has to be designed to accommodate that use in the future. Next slide. So here is the form-based code regulating plan. It covers the entire regional growth center. The area in pink, if you would, is the mixed use urban 75, meaning that up to 75 feet is allowed in those areas. The purplish is the mixed use center, where buildings are allowed to go up to 110 feet. The mixed use urban industrial is in 75 is in brown. And then the orange color is the mixed use neighborhood 45. And you can see the storefront overlay, hopefully, along those areas along 27th Street at the intersection of 27th and Bridgeport, in front of Grandview Plaza, and then also along Bridgeport in the town center zone, as well as Marketplace, and then along 40th and Bridgeport, going down to 42nd Street. Next slide. During the last study session, City Council member asked whether or not there were areas that were being rezoned to allow commercial uses where commercial uses were not previously allowed, and I misspoke there. The areas in brown, which are currently multifamily, the dark brown being multifamily high density, and the lighter shade of brown being multifamily low density, are within the sub-area plan designated to be mixed-use neighborhood, and been turned into that orange color on the regulating plan. So those areas would allow certain types of commercial uses to occur. I was asked during individual meetings with City Council member Worthington whether the Planning Commission had reviewed this and was aware of this and had asked a question. I did not recall specifically, but on Wednesday night we're having a Planning Commission meeting, and I'm bringing this slide to their attention. Next slide, please. There are 4 zones within the Regional Growth Center. The most least intense is the neighborhood commercial 45. And these are a table describing the type of form and the streetscape parking and uses that would be allowed in that zone. Next slide. The next two are the mixed use urban 75 and mixed use urban industrial 75. Again, the maximum height is 75 feet. There would be a variety of street types depending on the road grid, which we get to later, and identifies those. We have not designated any new roads in the grid system. We are reserving that exercise for the individual district plans to come later.
Excuse me, David, I think Councilmember Fleming has a question that's pertinent to where you're at right now. So Councilmember Fleming.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I actually have two questions, David. One is back on your previous slide where you showed the brown areas. There was two areas that were brown. One was a dark brown and one was somewhat of a lighter brown. Which is the one area you said that did not include commercial, but now it does? Is it just the dark brown or all of the brown?
All of the brown, both browns. As you can see on the map on the right is the brown, light brown and dark brown are currently multifamily. They do allow some commercial uses like, mostly residential churches, other types of daycares and nursing homes, that sort of thing. And then the map on the left shows that area in orange, which is the mixed-use neighborhood 45. Those would allow a greater extent of commercial uses, professional services, amusement and recreation, personal services, business support services, some automotive repair, but not gas stations. Those are the types of uses that could be allowed in those zones.
So under this proposal, I want to be sure I'm really clear on where we're trying to go with this. So under this proposal, this for the first time then allows for businesses to bleed into commercial businesses to bleed into residential neighborhoods. Is that correct?
To multifamily zones. All the multifamily zones there shown there are fully developed with multifamily.
But if I'm looking at that map on the left for commercial development, it really kind of goes into single family neighborhoods also, looking down to south.
That's correct. It abuts single family. There is also the existing mixed use zone along 27th Street, which currently allows those types additional commercial uses that abut directly upon residential, single family residential.
Okay.
So that's similar to that.
Can we go to the next slide then? Where you were, and here, you made nope, go back one. Here you'd made a statement that part of the form base required some form of commercial development on the first floors abutting the streets.
That's correct.
I guess I'm looking at the wrong slide because
back to the map.
In one of the slides that you just showed, no, it was after this one.
Before this one, you see the. Go ahead.
It said that in your slide it said should be, it didn't say must be. And the reason why I'm asking that question is, I mean, certainly, and Matt can attest to it, words have different meanings. If it's a requirement, it would be must be. If it's just a recommendation, it's a should be. I happened to be in a meeting earlier this week where those that participated in it said they liked the form base because they did not have to have commercial development on that first floor. So I'm kind of getting mixed messages. I heard what you said, I read what your slide said, and then I heard what I heard in a meeting. So what is the city's position on commercial retail on that first floor? Is it a should? Is it a must?
Yeah, it says under use in this slide, it says ground floor uses should include commercial, retail, restaurant, or other office spaces. Ground floor storefront architecture is required in the storefront overlay zone. So where those overlay zones that I described, the red lines in Town Center and in front of Grandview Plaza, the ground floor space is required to be designed and built to accommodate commercial, but it need not from the get-go be occupied by commercial, but it needs to be built for commercial uses so that subsequently it can be occupied as a commercial use.
So, you know, and this is not semantics, unfortunately. I would strongly suggest, if that is your goal, that word should be removed and put must. And it doesn't, even though it says must, it doesn't necessarily state you have to put something in there right away. It just says you must have that space available. Right now, if I were reading this as a developer, I would say, you recommended it, but I don't have to do it.
Thank you. I think there's some hands up.
Yep, Denise McCluskey, Councilmember McCluskey.
Thank you. I think typically when I was on the planning commission, the word was shall for must. So whenever I saw the word shall, then it was a absolutely must do. David, did the footprint of the town center on grow wider into some of the residential zoning?
No, the regional growth center and the form-based code regulating plan are the same area. Okay. It's just that there, as I pointed out, there are certain areas that are currently multifamily, low and high, or medium and high, that are now being considered to be mixed-use neighborhood 45. But otherwise, right, the area is the same.
In the 75 and the 110 foot height, are there any close to abutting neighborhoods, even if it's the mixed use neighborhoods at 45? Or
there is a couple of spots where the 75 does abut directly upon residential single family, and you can see that most clearly in the existing zoning map on your right in the red. So the parcels here in the town center area on the, principally on the east side of, or rather west side of Bridgeport, that are developed currently with the multifamily, the Coldwell Banker building, are the new Lot 12 apartment building. Actually, that doesn't itself abut on, but those abut directly on residential.
Okay. And what are we doing to protect the transition between the height and in the residential areas?
There is a height limit. Let's see, I'll have to look at that.
Okay.
There would be a 45 directly abutting the residential. There is a height limit of 45. I'll have to go back and find that provision. But it was similar as the one that we just did for this property down here, which is the SCB. The front parcel goes to 75, and the rear here at the end, adjacent to this neighborhood. I don't know if can you see my? You probably can't see my pointer.
I can't see your pointer, but I know where the SCB building is.
The Borghese property. The
Right.
Borghese property is split
Oh, the
in two
Borghese.
pieces.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the front half of it is in the 75, the rear is in the mixed-use neighborhood 45. So in that area there, it abuts single family. So all the orange you see is the 45 limit on the height. And in the pink, you can see for the most part, there's a mixed-use neighborhood 45 between the pink and any residential areas which are in white. Single-family residential areas, with the exception of the east side, the west side of Bridgeport, just south of 35th.
Right. And also in the discussion with the Planning Commission, were they considerate of light and air between the residential uses and the commercial?
I believe so, but Cliff has his hand up, so you can ask him.
Right, because when you have such a tall building next to residential, it's going to create shadows and block out light and air and also their quality of life that they're used to having.
Yeah, like I said, anything in the orange color on the map on the left is limited to 45 feet high.
Right. Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, Cliff Quisenberry here. Yeah, I'll jump in here. That was the intent of having it. If it's adjacent to any of the residential zones, you got the 45 foot height limit is to create that transition. So, understand that a lot of these zones here have that requirement in there. So even though you see it on the map abutting residential, don't think it's going to be at the full height.
Okay, right. Thank you.
And I was also going to respond to Councilmember Fleming on the question about should versus requiring it. If we go back to that slide, David, where you had the ground floor use. Yeah, really the whole part of this is to accommodate the fact that, the market may not be ready to, there may not be demand for ground floor uses that would be occupied by commercial uses at the beginning. But the idea is to require the architectural design to accommodate it, so in the future it could fit in there. So the idea is really to be accommodating to developers where they say, hey, we can't, if you require us to fill the ground floor, we can't fill it with a commercial use now, but maybe down the line, but at least we're going to require them to design it so they can accommodate it in the future. So it's really meant to be the flexibility there. And that's really kind of the spirit of most of the form-based code.
Okay. Councilmember Keel, you had your hand up.
Yes, Mayor, I did. But Cliff just made the point that I wanted to make.
Okay.
That was exactly the point I wanted to make. It was required to build it, but not required to fill it at this time.
Okay. Councilmember Figueroa, you had a question.
Yes, Mayor. And on that particular, on the same subject there, I think it needs to be clarified. I agree with Councilmember Fleming. And coming from the world of real estate development, I can tell you right now that can cause hiccups and confusions and conversations. And though we have David now and we have this council and staff, but new council, new staff, and I think it needs clarification because others may determine something different. I think that the wording needs to be that the at least if nothing else, even if you say ground floor uses shall include, if that's what is being changed to, if I heard it correctly, at the end of that sentence, it should say, but not required to finish the space. There's a difference between what my understanding is the architectural portion, which is a far-fetched from a finished space. It's a far-fetched from being even a shell, and a shell is even getting a big cost. So to me, architecturally, design so that there's it appears to be that it could be a storefront in the future or even then. I can see that, but I think that we need to make sure, because if I'm a developer, is this for shell purposes? I have to go to the shell stage, or is this a finished product? And it should actually also clarify that it's not required to fill those spaces, not required to do even at the shell space finish. So I think there needs to be some clarification on that whole use part, because I think it's problematic.
Okay.
All right, let's continue with the slideshow.
Well, no, I need to hear some comment about what David heard, and even our planning commissioner heard.
Well, I was going to allow him to do that as he proceeded. So go ahead, Mr. Swindell. Can you respond, please?
Absolutely. That's a good point. I've written down here to clarify the ground floor use requirement. And to what extent would that be required? Is it just a shell, or does it need to be in a finished state? The intent here was to require that it be built to accommodate the commercial use. So it's actually would be built to a building code requirement that would allow that just to move in. But in the interim, it could be used for a residential use, for example, the offices or a gym or common facilities for the residential use. So we can work on that and bring some proposed language back to the City Council.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, next slide, please. So here's the last zone type. It's the mixed-use center, 110. By reminder, this is the area in the northeast corner of the city. The storefront overlay in this area is along Mildred. If you have, for example, buildings back along 70th, you would not be required to have the storefront architecture or finish. And again, here we have the same language in the use that we will be taking a look at for your later consideration. Next slide. So the form-based code also is structured around the uses. A lot of uses have been combined. This is an example of some of the uses that the Planning Commission discussed. You'll note that under retail sales, there is a note number 1 that prohibits drive-throughs between 28th Street and 38th Street on Bridgeport Way. This just mimics an existing prohibition on drive-through uses in the mixed-use office zone, which is becoming a mixed-use neighborhood 45. So this note just fills that current requirement. The marijuana use that is currently codified or banned, if you would, in Chapter 5.35, which is our business licensing provisions, and in our zoning code. And then the third one is a prohibition on gas stations between 28th and 44th Streets in the mixed-use 75 and the mixed-use neighborhood 45. And that also mimics a current ban on those within the town center zone and the community commercial zone and the mixed-use office zones, which are going away. Next slide. So the form-based code is based upon a number of different types of buildings, as well as the frontages which address the street, and also the street designs of the which is the public realm. Next slide, please. The first type of structure or building that's allowed in the form-based code would be multiplexes. Now, I remind you that this is a residential use. primarily allowed in the mixed-use neighborhood 45, and it is not permitted on storefront lots within any of the 4 zones. There are a maximum length without modulation requirement and a maximum length per side. This building type is also subject to our design standards for mixed-use zones, which apply to the buildings that you now see in the town center area. The types of allowed frontages includes porches, stoops, dooryards, and light courts. We'll get to those later on. Next slide. There's also standalone apartment buildings. Again, they are not permitted on storefront lots. They have a maximum width of 100 feet and a maximum depth of 100 feet and a first floor height minimum of 10, upper story of 9. They have to be located up against the street, where the types of frontages allowed are the porch, stoop, dooryard, forecourt, and light court. Next slide, please. And then the mixed-use building, again, you notice that there's no restriction on it being located in the storefront overlay. In fact, they would be a preferred use in that zone or in that overlay zone, and it also has minimum and maximum floor heights and frontages. I doubt that we're going to see a maximum frontage of a mixed-use building at 400 feet, though. Again, here in this table shows the primary street. On the frontage is either a forecourt, a storefront, or an arcade. And then on the residential entrances, porch, stoop yard, dooryard, or light court. So there is an opportunity to have residential uses on the ground floor on a secondary street. Next slide. There are also frontage types, as I indicated, the stoop, porch, dooryard, forecourt, light court, storefront. Oh, that should be front. Sorry about the misspelling. An arcade. Next slide. This is an example of a forecourt. You can see how it's set back. The frontage is set back from the primary street with a minimum width and a minimum depth of at least 12 feet and a width to depth ratio of 2 to 1. This is on the main facade of the building at or near the frontage line. Next slide. And then there's the storefront. It is again on the street frontage. You'll notice that there is a awning requirement here. There is glass requirements. Here the main facade is at or near the front property line with a at-grade entrance facing the sidewalk, has substantial glazing, and that glazing is at least 50% of the storefront, and a door recessed a maximum of 12 feet back. Next slide. I talked about the road grid. These are the existing street grid system within the Form-Based Code Regional Growth Center area. And these I've gone over with Jack quite extensively, and they conform to our the standards in our Title 13. Although there is some differences in the names, Jack has asked that we change our major arterial to principal arterials, and our minor arterials, which are currently called secondary arterials, but they're one and the same. The principal and minor arterial names are consistent with the federal naming system, and so it's better represented in the map form. Council member, are there people with their hands up, or are those from before?
Those are from before.
Okay. Okay. I think Stan, is that up? Okay, so next slide, please. Each of those topologies that you saw, or rather street grid, were color coded, and they refer to the different types. So here's a storefront major arterial with on-street parking. Again, I've gone over these with Jack, and these are the standards for that type of road. And here's an illustrative cross-section below. Next slide. Here similarly is a storefront collector arterial with on-street parking, and the cross-section is reflective of the table above. Next slide. So we have sent these proposed comprehensive plan amendments that you'll review next to a mandatory state agency 60-day review period and to the Puget Sound Regional Council for comment. We've conducted a SEPA review, issued a threshold decision or determination, and published the notice in the TNT. We will have upcoming in December a public hearing on the comprehensive plan and the plan map amendment. And after that, a zoning code and zoning map amendment public hearing, which is optional, but in every case, we've had one by the council. After the public hearings, the amendments become effective. We submit those amendments to the PSRC for plan certification. We submit our amendments to the Department of Ecology, and the next step is to do the district plans I mentioned earlier. The Planning Commission's proposed work plan, which they will be reviewing this coming Wednesday night, includes beginning with the Northeast Business District sub-area district plan. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay. We are running a bit behind on our proposed agenda. Are there any direct questions in regards to the form-based code? Councilmember Figueroa, you had your hand up?
Yes, Mayor. And David, can you go back to that last slide, please?
That is not in my control, but Amanda or Linda, whoever has control of the slideshow.
Did they leave us?
Well, can you ask your question, Mr. Figueroa?
There you go.
There we go.
Whoops.
Okay.
The last page.
And David asked, this is all about timing. I'm kind of confused. I didn't think that there were so many steps involved in getting the form-based code approved and be able to be utilized by property owners and developers.
Yes,
So clarify what all these steps mean as far as, I guess to put it bluntly, if I'm a property owner, I'm a developer, when can I go and invest in the University Place and taking advantage of this new form-based code?
Well, currently, the City Council is scheduled to make a public hearing and with a consideration on December 7th. And I believe there is a short period after which
Stop right there. Why December 7th? I thought that we still have a meeting coming up, a second meeting in November. Why is this being delayed?
Is that on the agenda? I was under the impression that the public hearing was scheduled for December 7th.
Public hearing and consideration.
But why are we missing a whole council meeting and delaying it?
Well, our next agenda is extremely full. We're already running late on our next agenda. And this gives staff a time to update based on the comments made tonight.
I don't need that much time. This is something that's already been working on. And this was been on the books forever and should take a priority. How in the world you filled a bunch of other things on the agenda prior to this is not acceptable, Mayor. And something this complex that we have to wait again, this just isn't right. It just isn't right. People are waiting to invest in our city. People are waiting to invest in our city to put money down, millions, but yet we have time to talk about taxation. We put a priority on bringing taxes forward, but yet on something that actually may bring revenue gets kicked.
Comments are noted, sir. Councilmember Keel, you had your hands up.
I'm not done, Mayor.
Oh. Okay.
I'm not done at all. So get back to that slide, please. That was just a portion of what the whole, all those bullets that you showed. You never answered my question, David. You started to, but this is very irritating, and it's on you, Mayor, for not allowing to not programming our agendas to allow for something this important that we've been working on. It's complex. It's already been kicked around all year round, and now it's being kicked around even more. It should come to the next meeting. It really should. Period. That being said, David,
yes, sir.
How many? What else has to happen? Whether it be this next meeting in December or in November, if I can get it, council members to change it. What else has to happen? I'm trying to get some clarification for our developers, our property owners, to invest in our city. When will this all end to get them to be able to take advantage of this?
The earliest date it can be effective is December 2nd. I submitted the comprehensive plans to the Department of Commerce as soon as I had a recommendation from the Planning Commission and then that started a mandatory state agency 60-day review period. I might add that I have already received comment from the Department of Commerce. They are typically the only people who comment on these sorts of things, and they had no comment.
So if I heard you correctly,
December 2nd.
The next time that the council studies and considers this, which supposedly in the first meeting in December, that if this passes, it's done. And how soon after that can someone go to the table with the city and say, I want to do this? How soon? The next day? Next week?
Is Emmy there?
5 days after publication.
5 days after publication.
Thank you.
And when would publication be done, complete?
Immediately after the mayor signs it.
Okay, so the mayor will sign it that night or the next morning, 5 days, and then people can take advantage. Okay, that's clarity, because there's been a lot of uncertainty when this is all in. It seems like we're always adding and kicking this. So I understand what you just said, and getting back to this agenda item, Mayor, I'm very, very disappointed that this is being delayed into December.
So noted. Are you done now, sir?
No, I'm still steaming.
Okay, steam away.
It's a shame of what you've done with our agenda.
So noted, sir. Thank you. Councilmember Keel, you had your hands up. Are you still wanting to make a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, Councilman Keel. So Cliff and David, when this is a lot of work, and I appreciate the amount of time you all and the commission has put into this, and I'm real excited to see the drawings and the words and all that kind of stuff. And it's really, and what I've read and the meetings I've been in, I could see this is pretty extensive. And I believe that this is going to give the developing community as well as citizens some new opportunities, some new ways to interact with us, and also develop their projects and give them a lot more flexibility once we get it instituted. So I'm really excited about that. The first question I have is how many businesses and developers have you heard from to date on this plan, and what have you heard from them about this?
We have currently 5 developments that are waiting in the wings for the passage of this code. Amendments, they are principally multifamily developments, but also mixed use. Along the Grandview Plaza, for example, that redevelopment, there's 2 projects there that are waiting. The Borghese property, although they initially indicated that they were not going to wait, they are anticipating waiting for the form-based code. We have, and then we have another fairly large project that we just became aware of up on the Narrows Plaza, or rather the Northeast Business District, wherein we've actually got talking to developer about putting in that road grid system that we've been seeking for a long period of time there. And I'm trying to remember what the 5th one is.
Well, I mean that's great. I mean, for an initial kind of rollout and kind of waiting, I think that's really key. And so I'm excited about the mayor getting her signature on this document, and us, going through these 5 days so that we can actually get these things to go in, because the point that Councilman Figueroa made about, it's revenue coming in and building coming in, I think it's a good one, and I think we all see that, right? Particularly if someone's going to put in a road grid in the northeast corner up in Four Corners. Mm-hmm. I could be happy about that all day long, because of what they're doing. So the other question I had is, we are talking about different aspects of things, and I certainly understand that we as council members, we want to make sure that we get our understanding of this and it's looking right. But I'm wondering if you've heard any pushback on any of the things that we have that's in the plan now, right? And the example I have is like we were talking about earlier, where we've got different uses abutting other uses, and maybe some of the downfall in that, and then some of these other kind of things, shall and should and stuff like that. Have those business community, those folks that are doing this, have they given you any feedback along those lines? I mean, what kind of red flags have you coming up with, any of that, if any?
Not from the development community, and really haven't had any pushback. Although I want to, as I indicated earlier, we're going to have a planning commission meeting on Wednesday. We're going to talk about their work plan, which will be up to the city council for study in the second meeting in November. But I did want to go back and revisit the question that Councilmember Worthington asked me with regard to the uses that would now be allowed in the multifamily zones. And I want to get the feedback from the Planning Commission, because I don't recall exactly if we discussed that, but given the council members' concern, I felt it was important to go back to the Planning Commission and have a further discussion on that point. So they may come back with an alternative recommendation regarding that, but we haven't had that discussion.
Okay, great. So my last question is, I'm looking at the map here. It's down 27th, you know, that whole Red Apple Orchard place there. There's a couple of different uses that I see down in there. I mean, you got some apartments, you got you know, UPP is down there, and you got some, you know, residential homes down there too. Is there any, you know, over the years, we've heard a lot of interest, I put it that way, with citizens around about that area. Anything in particular that you heard from folks about form-based code in that area at all?
Just from the Grandview Plaza developers, we have not heard from any of the other property owners. Actually, I'll take that back. We do have John Sirdakis has purchased the vacant lot across from the Pine Cone, who is interested in developing that property. It's outside the form-based code area. So at the time we do the 27th Street District Plan, we will be inviting others to join. We had also a discussion with the Presbyterian Church. Initially, we felt that they wanted to actually convert some of their back parcels into a parking lot, additional parking for their church, and they've got some property back there, but they don't need to do the form-based code in order to get that. And then there was a third party which was also interested in converting his residential home, abutting, I believe, on Sunset, that was also interested in being a part of that mixed use or that neighborhood N45 zoning, principally because he has a very large house. I think it's a 6-bedroom house, and he is having trouble selling it as a residential dwelling, and was hoping to get it rezoned to a commercial zone and sell it as for a commercial use.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, and Commissioner Keel, just real quick clip here. You know, answer your question. We've seen some pushback as kind of an intro to this. It wasn't about the form-based code, but it was brought up at the meetings when the Borghese property development came and some of the neighbors came out. And then also with regard to what David was just talking about with the use there with that 6-bedroom house, you know, it's the same typical thing that you find is that when people are realizing that next door they may have some commercial activity. If we change the zoning, you know, there's been resistance to that. And I do think, I'm just to forewarn you, I think the way usually we found is when a specific property gets identified that it might be rezoned, that's when you start to see the response from the community. Unfortunately, this entire process, other than those type of cases, we haven't had participation by the residents. So, you know, but it was kind of a introduction, I think, kind of a foreshadowing of what you might see as these things start to get developed. I think you will find people and sometimes misinterpreting what's going on here, where we are trying to buffer against the residential zones, but they immediately see larger heights and, you know, maybe, and again, you know, I think actually if we start talking about allowing some commercial activities next to residential, you know, homes, et cetera, then, you know, I think we have to be prepared that there is going to be some concern about that. But as a commission, we're also concerned about that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Councilmember Fleming, you had your hand raised. Do you still have a question?
I do, Madam Mayor. And back to the idea of individuals who want to take single parcels and make them commercial or make them that in residential because they can't sell it. I would just strongly urge the council to resist any type of onesie twosies exceptional kind of planning for the city. You know, we as a community and we as a city have spent an inordinate amount of years and hours trying to ensure that residential community stayed residential, commercial stayed commercial, so we wouldn't have this kind of sprawl that you see in some of our neighboring cities where they've kind of managed to make an exception on this parcel or that parcel, and now you've got commercial right in the center of a neighborhood. You know, this idea that, well, if I can't sell my property, I'll zone it to something else, regardless of what the surrounding neighborhood calls for. I just find that a very dangerous, slippery slope. So I know people will be tempted at times to break up neighborhoods to do that. And I think one of the beauties of University Place is that we've been very successful in preserving our neighborhoods for families and individuals who want to live in a neighborhood and not live in a commercial business district. So appreciate that particular individual's plight, but boy, you open Pandora's box on that. There's no way getting out of that one and going back. So that's my comment.
The Planning Commission did not recommend any one of those three, and they are not included in this amendment.
Okay, with that, our next item is the comprehensive plan overview with David Swindell and Planning Chair Quisenberry. It is now 9:10. Our meeting is set to adjourn at 9:30. We still have 2 items on the agenda, so I wanted to let you know. Mr. Swindell, can you do a pretty comprehensive, quick wrap up on the comprehensive plan?
Absolutely. I think I can do that really quickly. Lisa.
Yeah, not in that order.
Amanda, can you bring up the staff report, please? Okay, can you scroll down? Okay, more. More. Just a little bit more. Okay, a little bit up. One more page up. Okay, this basically slide kind of summarizes the extent of the comprehensive plan amendments. Here you can see in the community character policy number CC4A, so right there. Basically what we're doing is amending the comprehensive plan so that the goals and policies and the appropriate background information basically is consistent with our code amendments and the form-based code. So here, instead of reading design standards or adopt a design standards for new development and redevelopment to help achieve unique quality, it now says adopt a form-based code for the city's regional growth center to achieve the vision of the center that will continue to transform, et cetera, et cetera. So if you went through my staff report here, which is 18 pages long, all you would see is basically amendments like this, just like this, that basically take goals and policies and background information and updates it to be consistent with the form-based code. Is that short enough?
Oh, that is excellent. Any questions from council at this time? Did you understand the presentation? Okay, I don't see any hands raised, so you did a fantastic job, Mr. Swindell. Oh, Denise, she would have to raise her hand. So
I know, I was trying to get to that little button. My cursor wasn't moving quick enough. I just had a clarification question. I think you guys did an awesome job for presenting, and our planning commission, it was very thoughtful and intricate in their comments as they look through this complex design of form-based code. I'm very excited that there's a lot of built-in flexibility here. I just want to be cognizant that we're going to protect the residential community, whether it's a multifamily or R2, that their quality of life and is not going to be encumbered by the height of the buildings. And my other, I was perusing through the comp plan, and in the goal HS4, there was a term called emergency housing and transitional housing. And so I wanted a little more of a definition on what that could be.
Can you bring up that staff report again? Let's look at that. Do you know what the page on that is?
No, I wish I did.
Okay, can you scroll down then?
It's goal HS4.
Okay, it's going to be down a ways.
Yeah.
Keep going, 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 keep going. Okay, transportation. I think housing's above that.
Yeah, you passed it.
Yeah. Because when I hear the term emergency housing, I'm thinking in a case of an emergency, we have places to house people, but it would be.
Yeah. Okay. That's the one page, Amanda. Further down, right there.
HS4. Goal HS4.
Oh, you're way down in some exhibits. I don't have those up.
Right.
So there are no amendments proposed regarding that.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you can on a sidebar since the meeting.
Okay, I can get back to you on that.
Yeah, the transitional housing and the emergency housing.
Okay.
The conceptual idea and in the for those housing choices, University Place, and where would be the best fit to place them.
Transitional and emergency. Okay.
Right.
I'll get back to you on that.
All righty. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from council regarding the comprehensive plan amendment changes? Okay, not seeing any. We'll move on to our final item, which is the 2021 legislative agenda. It is now 9:15. We are scheduled to get out by 9:30, so we may need an extension, just giving a warning here. So Mr. Sugg, you are presenting the legislative agenda.
I am, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Tonight we have for you for study this legislative agenda for 2021, the city's 2021 legislative priorities. The next legislative session of the state will begin on January the 11th. So that's just a date to note. We will get this before you for passage well prior to that, hopefully by the next meeting. But here for tonight, we wanted to present to you a list of legislative priorities for your consideration, and for you to discuss was to whether you were okay with this or wanted to add anything. What you have before you is a resolution, as we've done in the past. It lists 3 priorities. One is, and these are all AWC's priorities. They're listed, but we make, to drive home the point, we've listed those 3 as of particular interest. Initiative 976. This is one that is of concern that there might be future attempts to roll back vehicle license fees. We don't believe it'll be the last voter approved initiative. And it's so as a sustainable revenue source for transportation funding, we have a question mark around that. So we're urging the legislature, AWC's urging the legislature to adopt a new transportation revenue package that will emphasize maintenance and preservation funding and provides for an equitable level of local funding, as well as additional local revenue options for cities. So something that is more sustainable and less subject to the possibility of them being repealed in some way because it's attached to something else, as the Transportation Benefit District is tied with vehicle license fees. So that's that. AWC does some nice position papers, which are included in your packet, which follows this resolution. The second one is legislative priority for you to consider adding to your mix is the financial flexibility. This is specifically what we're looking at is the REIT real estate excise tax. Removing all of the restrictions on the use of the real estate excise tax. Right now, it's very encumbered with restrictions on how it can be spent by the local level. So we receive the real estate excise tax, but you don't have the ability to deploy that in to where it's needed. You have to use it for certain capital needs. It's very restricted on how it can be used. So we're asking for those restrictions. AWC, we're supporting that. This would support AWC's efforts to remove those restrictions, to give local governments who know how best to spend the funds that are distributed the option to deploy those funds in a meaningful way. And then finally, the third item is the city-state partnership, which we value. In particular, the distribution of liquor state-shared revenues, liquor revenues and criminal justice assistance funding. Those we want to see maintained. AWC has been, keeping a focus on this. It's easy for the state to balance budgets by sweeping funds that have traditionally gone back to the local communities where they were meant to be. So that's what that particular item is about. There's lots of reading material that's attached, but I just wanted to highlight those three. There's additional ones that AWC is pursuing, and you can read those. And then let me just turn it back to you in the limited amount of time we have, so we can hear from you, Mayor, and the council members.
Okay. At this time, any input, questions, or comments regarding our proposed legislative agenda? Yes, Council Member Figueroa.
Thank you, Mayor. Steve, we don't have any needs for grants or monies for any of our projects in town?
That's a good question, Councilmember. In terms of the traditional funding that you pursue through the state legislature, state capital grants, we already have a capital grant that of approximately $1 million that we need to spend and deploy in a meaningful way before we go back and approach that. That was our approach. Is that we need to show results on the monies that they've already given us, which is the $900 and some odd thousand. So I think that was our thought on that, and then we'll see where we're at. But good question.
So just as a follow-up comment, Mayor, and that is, and thank you, Steve. I understand your point there, is that sewer. Those that are on septic systems still is an issue in our city. We'll never have, it's going to be a long time before us as a city can pull together any kind of assistance funding to help with putting systems in. I know that we've done something in back of our development to some residential area or developer there. Because it was a plus or an advantage to us to do that. But in the big picture, we still have some real issues in our city with a lot of different neighborhoods where people cannot afford to pay for the LID and the long-term financing is there. So I know we've raised this before, but we as a council have never made it a legislative request and formulated that thought and that request to be able to advocate for it year after year until hopefully somebody listens and get some assistance. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see this council, give me some help, whether that's, I think it's worth, trying to, I don't know what how we would put it together as far as words and the ask, but certainly I think it's worthy of it because we do have citizens in neighborhoods and that they have failing systems, and it's very, very costly to hook up.
I would concur on that. Yeah, I would concur on that issue. It's been an ongoing thing. I mean, some sort of funding or something to get Pierce County Sewer Department to help assist on offsetting costs, seeing as that
And
it
at
is
the
there.
state,
Yeah.
at the state.
At
So
the-
Steve, can you have staff pull together some verbiage that will make sense, a legitimate request that we can advocate for to our legislators? And we can just start, this year, and it might take several years, but we have to start somewhere, and we've never have done that.
Yes, Councilmember, we can do that. We can bring that back when we bring this back for adoption.
And I'm asking for my councilman. Thank you, Mayor, for supporting that thought. I'm not sure about the other council members, but obviously it takes it'll be another one. Okay, good. Well, thank you, guys. I think that will be a worthy note that our citizens will be appreciative of us advocating for that. Thank you.
Okay. Before we go on to Mayor Pro Tem Worthington and his comments, can I request an extension for 15 minutes?
Mayor Bellisi, this is Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, and I move that we extend our meeting to 9:45.
Okay.
I second Keel.
All right. Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. We're on till 9:45. Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, you raised your hands.
Yes, okay. I think there might have been someone else in front of me, but I'd be happy to jump in anyway. First off, Councilmember Figueroa, thank you. I think the sewer issue is an important one. I've worked with our residents, some of our residents, individuals who have been looking for ways to expand their systems, replace their failing systems, replace a neighborhood that is very costly. And it's a big money deal, and it's a huge challenge. Ultimately, there wasn't a good solution dealt with on a neighborhood basis. We have a hearing, I believe, coming up, Mayor and Mr. Sugg, having to do with one of the options here. But the reality is it may be more than just a few words on the paper. We might need some time to figure out a strategy and then take that strategy when we figure it out, find out how the state can best help us with that. And I think it's well worth the energy, as you said. It just may not be an issue that's ripe enough. We may not know quite enough of what we want to fix at the moment. But we have to look at it and find out. Happy to do that. And I think it'd be well spent time-wise. The other item I wanted to touch on is on the AWC list. It's in our council packet on page 779, and it talks about police reform. And that's an issue for AWC. For many of their members, we recently passed a resolution, or rather a proclamation, attesting to the need for our community to look at such things as we consider a social justice reform. And I know various members of the council and our community have been engaged in that. AWC has put some reasonable thought into this, and while I don't know if it's the perfect solution, it is a step in the right direction, and I believe we should think about that, talk about that, and consider that as an agenda issue for us in our legislative platform as well. So I wanted to put that out there and see where other council members may be as well.
No. Okay. Council Member Keel.
Great, thank you, Mayor, Councilmember Keel. So I appreciate Councilman Worthington your comment. That was very close to the comment that I wanted to make along this regard. And we had a lot of work, when at the height of George Floyd's murder and all the thing that's going on. We did a lot of stuff, and at that time I talked about really wanting to make sure that we actually do something and not do the soft, fluffy, artwork and let's all hold hands and do kumbaya and stuff and really do something. We started down that line, and we had even a proclamation. We did that, and I see the three things that we have in our fact right now. There's the closest thing that I see to it is in that third bullet where it talks about criminal justice assistance funding. I mean, that's the closest thing that we talk about criminal justice. I think there's this, kind of understood that we support everything AWC does, but ours doesn't call it out. And I gotta tell you, I'm like real disappointed in that. And it's kind of like I almost want to say, see, I told you. we were just gonna do the fluffy and then just let it die, because what I was expecting was, and that's why I appreciate, Councilman Worthington's point to call it out. What I was hoping is that the bullet would already be there and talk about criminal, police reform and all those things, like we all said that we wanted to do back when, it was the topic of the day. But my feeling is that this went along the way that it always goes. We talk about it when it's hot and heavy, and then when it dies down, then we don't talk about it anymore. And it's proof to me that we don't have that bullet in the next legislation proposal that we have. We didn't even put it in there. So, yeah. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember McCluskey.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I was going to mention that point as well as Mayor Pro Tem Worthington and Councilmember Keel, because I thought it would have a stronger presence. So in our legislative proposal I would think we for the legislative policies, we should include a criminal justice component that ties into our proclamation goals. And it's not to leverage sales tax, but maybe to leverage some state support in order to help implement some of our goals that are intrinsic inside of our proclamation, especially when it comes to driving the policies that will lead to change from the grassroots and subject matter experts of people we bring in, but also our citizens engagement as well, because we all need funding and communication and implementation of the design. And some of the issues at large, we probably already know the direction we need to take, but there's other portions of that must include citizens buy-in and input. And this on the state level, I was thinking that they would have some of those aspects in this regards, and they kind of lightly touched on it, criminal justice and some police reform, and which is good, and we need part of it, but it doesn't really go into protecting the health and well-being of the Blacks that are engaged in some of the issues which brought it to our attention, not only outside of our community, but in our community as well, with the use of force and that the misconduct of an officer, it touches that, but it really doesn't go into the details. So I think in our action plan of the legislative goals, we should be a little more specific and directive with that. Thank you.
Councilmember Figueroa, you raised your hand again.
Oh, no, I never put it down. Sorry.
Okay.
I put it down now. There it goes. Sorry. Mayor Pro Tem Worthington.
Thank you, Mayor. And yes, I did raise my hand again. And just to pick up where Councilmember McCluskey and Councilmember Keel have commented on. So AWC does have some thoughts about how to proceed and some things to advocate for. Some of those are very much revolve around the hiring authority, who is responsible, the agency that is responsible for both hiring officers and running appropriate discipline for officers. That's not our particular role, but it is our interest. It is our interest that we know that the agency has a good set of information to make hiring decisions from. It is our interest that they have well-developed disciplinary processes and that they have the ability to follow through when there's an investigation. Those are some good things. I think I'd like an opportunity to. I suggest we take an opportunity to discuss those when we bring the agenda up next time, and see if there are some planks that we want to add to our platform, our legislative platform, about those issues, or maybe others related to social justice.
Okay. Council Member Pro Tem Lee, you had your hand raised.
Yes, Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, I concur with everything that everybody said. I too was disappointed that the proclamation that we drafted and passed really got no traction. And I also think that that there's more than just that our proclamation was included more than just policing. So I'm just tossing that out as my, I concur. I would like to see this move forward in some form, because right now our proclamation is just words. I don't see any real action on it. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we all need to be reading the AWC criminal justice paper to understand the issues on AWC. I do think as a council, we also have a responsibility to prioritize our respective desires. We all can interpret information differently and have different objectives. So my suggestion is that we all read the paper, the write-up from AWC, and provide staff with our own ideas and suggestions on what our priorities from our personal perspective are that we need to include in this legislative proposal, and have staff write it up. I don't think it was staff's responsibility to do this particular initiative. This was our initiative to carry forward. So it's our initiative to set the legislative priority on that particular issue. So I would recommend that we all read the paper. We send an email to staff within the next week so that it can be put in as part of the legislative priority, and find out where we have commonality to move this initiative forward. But I do agree it needs to be brought in as a city initiative, and it needs to be part of our legislative authority. But are we looking at it from what standpoint? Funding for getting out to the community? Are we looking at legislative changes to be made at the state level? And if so, in what areas specifically? Seeing as how we don't personally hire and train our police officers, but we contract through it, we look at this in a different, through a different lens as a city versus as individual citizens. So we need to identify our priorities from that perspective too, to have more weight in what we're moving forward. So that is my suggestion. Otherwise, we'll be talking it to death at our next legislative agenda proposal, and we still won't reach decision. But we need to come to some common ground here to move forward. So Councilmember McCluskey, you raised your hand, then Councilmember Figueroa, and then Councilmember Keel, and we have approximately 12 minutes before our meeting is scheduled for conclusion. So.
Okay, mine was real quick. I was trying to allude to the fact that we need money in order so that hopefully the state will provide us some funding sources in order to establish the community liaison or a check and balance with however it looks like with maybe a possibility. And I'm just going out there brainstorming with the Citizen Advisory Committee to look at some of our legislative components for any inert biases or whatever. You know, that's just kind of my brainstorming really quick thought process on that, and I'll formalize it a lot more in writing, because I with a framework on that.
Councilmember Keel and then Councilmember Figueroa.
Great, thank you, Mayor. I'll be happy to do what you suggest with staff. You know, it'll take me just a few minutes. I'm, you know, the suggestion of reading what AWC has, I can tell you very comfortably. I'm intimately familiar with everything that AWC is saying, is from housing to police reform to everything that's in that document. Having, you know, one of the principals to help put it all together. So I guess my disappointment comes from, you know, the conversation that we all had about all this, and what I was hoping, and, you know, that would happen is that if it took root, and I'm glad we're going to have the conversation now, but what I thought is that when you look at what AWC does, there are just some things here that's in there around the law that are, and I try to say this when we're talking about it, where we actually have law that has teeth that will actually bring about a change in the practice, right? I mean, and there are some things right here. I mean, establishing the duty for all officers to immediately intervene and report misconduct by a fellow officer. I mean, that's in the legislation that AWC says, and that's something that, even though we don't have police officers, we have police officers that work for us, but if we advocate that law at the state level be changed, that's going to make it better for everybody. So it's not only things that we do or that we control, but it's us as a city adding our voice to the state law so that the legislature knows that, hey, there's another city that wants some change in the law and the practice of what police officers are doing. So that is where my hope is that we as a city can add our voice and our legislative power to that.
Yeah.
So, but I'll be happy to just cut and paste those things and send them to the staff so that, you know, maybe we can get it this time.
Okay, we have 3 minutes remaining before, unless we extend again. Councilmember Figueroa.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just real quick, I think Councilmember Keel said it, you know, and I think that's what this whole thing has been about. Let's support AWC's agenda, specifically around that issue. But also I agree with Councilmember McCluskey about the funding. I know is that if there's time to understand what kind of funding, how much, for what, it might be nice to. There's a 13,000 foot level of what Kent was saying about what AWC is looking at. I think that's great, but you know, there are some things at the local level that we may want to do that again may cost fun. It would be nice to have some funding if the state can do that. And the last thing, my last comment is, I think that we're going to be able to do some things for this between now and the end of the year. We'll only have a couple more meetings to deal with how we can maybe fine tune this legislative proposal going up to the legislators in this coming session. But I think that to really get into some of the details locally, legislatively, what policies we want to put out, I think that we should have it on a retreat and allow appropriate time for us to really discuss how we want to proceed in our community with this issue and what we want to incorporate and how do we want to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments at this time?
Any questions? Okay, not hearing any. We're a whole minute early. So with that, I will adjourn our session. Good evening. Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Thank you all.